NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House. NBC's Ali Vitale is on Capitol Hill. And also with us, senior political correspondent for The Hill, Amy Parnes, and New York Times chief White House correspondent, Peter Baker. Gabe, what is the feeling in the White House as these doubts in D.C. keep spiraling, and the expectations for today's press conference?
Hi there, Anna. Good morning. Well, the White House and the campaign insist that President Biden is staying in the race, and they view today's press conference as an unscripted event that will prove to his doubters, to those on Capitol Hill, to donors, for example, that he is ready to do the job. Now, as you mentioned, this is his first solo press conference of the year, and we understand that it's now been pushed back an hour because of NATO's schedule. It's now scheduled for around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But, Anna, this is something that Washington, really, many of President Biden's critics will be watching to see how he answers reporters' questions at this point. We don't have an exact time for how long this press conference may last. The president has held other news conferences, but it's important to note that those are usually with foreign leaders, and they only offer usually 2 domestic reporters and 2 international reporters to ask questions, not very lengthy at all. This press conference is expected to go longer, and he is expected to address head-on these doubts about the future of his candidacy, Anna.
And Peter, the White House has told us they don't see today's news conference as a singularly high-stakes moment. Are they misreading this situation?
Well, they'll say that unless he does really well, in which case they'll tell us it really was, right? I mean, of course, they're trying to lower expectations because they're nervous about how it will turn out. And the problem is it's really hard for the president, even in a single news conference, to settle the questions and concerns that are out there. Because even if he does well, it doesn't mean that he will continue to do well. As we've seen with him, he has moments where he can perform very strongly. He gave a very strong State of the Union address a few months ago. People hung on. And then the debate obviously showed that he has some moments that are not so good. So they're trying to downplay expectations. But I think it's right to say that this is the biggest test since that debate, because there's no teleprompter there. It's not a single, one-on-one interview. The reporters will ask tough questions and they'll go on for a while. And he will have to do so at late in the day when he has been said to be a little more fatigued. And after a number of meetings he's going to have with these NATO leaders today.
And we're looking at live pictures right now from the White House, where we expect to see the president leave any minute to the NATO summit at the Mellon Auditorium there in D.C. Ali, we also have reported the president's team will join a Senate caucus lunch on the heels of more public defections in the past 24 hours, including the first Democratic senator. What's the outlook? Are Senate Democrats ready to have tough conversations with these aides?
You're talking about that first Democratic senator, and the reason that I keep turning around is not because I'm not engaged in our conversation, but because that senator is walking down the hall behind us. I'm going to try to see if he'll come over and talk to us live about the decision that he made in an op-ed last night, making him the first Democratic senator to break ranks with the rest of the party and outright call for President Biden to step down as the nominee. That's not to say other senators haven't been critical. Certainly Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado came out earlier in the week to say, yeah, when I was in a private room, at a private lunch with my colleagues, I voiced concerns about the president's electability, and now, of course, he put his name to it. Senator Welch of Vermont, of course, going a step further here. But as we're in the hallway talking with these senators, the meeting that they're leading up to around lunchtime is with a trio of Biden campaign aides who will try to push a path forward, a strategy for where things are. Senator Durbin, what do you need to hear from the Biden campaign? Senator Welch, can you explain your decision here?
President Biden. Excuse me. Well, I wrote about it. I mean, it's everything that I think is in my statement. Why do you feel
the senator saying he wrote about this. He wrote about coming to his decision. Sorry for the hustle in there. It's a crowded space. But Senator Welch saying, Anna, he came to his decision on asking the president to step down from the role as the party's standard bearer in an op-ed last night. He said he didn't want to expand on it. He already wrote about it. You saw the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin, saying that Welch was the person to talk to. We also have Senator Dick Blumenthal, who yesterday seemed to leave the door open in a way that we've also heard other senators do, saying that he wants to give Biden the space to make a decision here. Of course, the reality is Biden's already made a decision. Anna?
I like your timing there, Ali. Thanks for timing it out so we could have
Senator
that
Coons,
moment with the senator during our show. And keep on working it for us. We'll come back to you as you get more response from those senators. And of course, on the other side of the hill there in Congress, you have the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, also saying he will be relaying concerns his members have about President Biden's reelection bid directly to the president. Any idea when that will happen?
Yeah, this is something that we reported yesterday in my conversations with Democratic members who have been huddled with their leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Publicly, Jeffries has been on message, supportive of the president and his reelection efforts. Of course, we know Jeffries was one of the first Democratic leaders to get a call from the president in the aftermath of that debate performance just about 2 weeks ago now. But our understanding, according to our sources, is that Jeffries has heard plenty of concerns from within his Democratic caucus ranks in the House, and that he says to those members that he will relay them to the president. Now, when I asked Jeffries about this yesterday, all he said is, we're having family conversations. One reporter posited to him that Biden's the patriarch of this family. Certainly he should be involved at some point, but Jeffries did not expand or elaborate on when those concerns or how those concerns would be relayed. But look, nothing's happening in a vacuum. Members are on television, clearly venting their frustration with the president's electability and this current moment within Democratic politics. You can't imagine the president's not already aware that those concerns exist.
Yeah, Amy, what are your thoughts on Jeffries taking these grievances directly to President Biden?
I mean, I've heard personally, Anna, that it's pretty bad internally over there. There are a lot of Democrats who are upset about the direction. They were a little pleased in the beginning of the week when the president was a little more vocal, a little more defiant, but they're back to where they started basically after the debate, which is why this moment right today is so pivotal for the president, because he has to quickly quiet concerns, which is why you're seeing his aides rush over to Capitol Hill today to kind of assuage all these worries from Democrats in the Senate. I think they're going to have to do the same very quickly in the House, because it is a battle against time. They are trying to run out the clock. I think that's their strategy in a way, but they are also battling the clock, and the clock is ticking, and they don't have much time. And I think that's why you heard the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi yesterday say what she said, and you're going to hear other leaders come out very quickly, I think, and say, you know, we're waiting on the president to make his decision, but he needs to make it now.
Gabe, actor, key Biden backer, Democratic fundraiser George Clooney wrote that stunning op-ed calling on Biden to exit the race. And now you're getting some reaction from the Biden camp?
Yeah, that's right, Anna. Look, it wasn't just any Hollywood actor that came out with that op-ed yesterday. George Clooney raised a lot of eyebrows because he's been a longtime Democratic activist and donor, and he actually co-hosted that fundraiser for President Biden just several weeks ago. So him coming out with that op-ed that you see right there, I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee. It is now getting some pushback from the Biden campaign. A source familiar with the planning for the fundraiser says that part of the reason that President Biden returned to Southern California so quickly after the G7 summit in Italy was because that was the day that worked for George Clooney. So this source added the fact that George Clooney is now going after the president for what the source characterized as being tired during the fundraiser is, quote, a little rich. The source also said that President Biden stayed at that fundraiser for quite a while, for 3 hours, whereas George Clooney just took a photo and left. So certainly a lot of pushback here. The Biden campaign seeming to want to quash this narrative and really pushing back strongly. A spokesperson for George Clooney declined to comment on the record on it.
Amy, Team Biden getting into this tiff with Clooney. This debate has gone beyond sidetracking his campaign message. When does this get settled? When do Democrats accept President Biden is staying, or this hits a tipping point?
I think that's why today is so important, Anna. They're going to be looking for the president to solidify or appease people at the moment, and he's going to have to do more, which is why I think you're seeing the interview he's doing with Lester Holt on Monday. But he's going to have to get out there more campaigning, more interviews, more off the cuff. And of course, I don't think this ever gets easier for him. Even if he stays in, he's going to be scrutinized, heavily scrutinized going forward, because people are are going to be looking for a gaffe, for a blank stare, for anything to kind of hold against him. And in some ways, I think some Democrats have acknowledged that they kind of want that because they think that that will get him to drop out quicker. So you're hearing that too, and that's a rather interesting thread too.
Peter, we've certainly seen a sense of urgency coming from President Biden and his campaign. You report that his strategy has somewhat pivoted. Quote, Biden has switched from defense to offense, taking a page out of his predecessor's playbook to try to quash an internal uprising over his age and capacity. Rather than just try to show that he's up to the job, Mr. Biden has opted to push back against those who say he is not. But, Peter, it hasn't seemed to shut down any of the active debate behind closed doors on the Hill or among voters.
No, I think he had about 24 or 48 hours where it looked like perhaps he could hold the dam and, use that aggressive strategy to keep Democrats on board no matter how concerned they were. But I think you're right. The last 24 hours, the comments by Nancy Pelosi yesterday seeming to indicate that she did not accept that his decision was to stay in the race yet. The comments by George Clooney in the op-ed, the comments by Senator Welch in his piece, I think all of that indicates that this is not over. A lot of Democrats have wanted to not embarrass the president on the world stage as he hosted the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance here in Washington. But after the leaders leave town today, tomorrow and the weekend, feel like it's kind of a jump ball, and we'll see how things go. It's been hard for the Biden team to keep Democrats on board simply because the anxiety they're feeling right now, it's kind of been pent up for a long time, but kept under wraps because, of course, they want to beat Donald Trump. And that's still the most important thing to most Democrats. So what Biden needs to do is to convince them he's the guy still who can beat Donald Trump. And that's going to be a tall order.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.